I'm still confused philosophically, but let's leave that to one side and just be absolutely clear. When you said at the time of the election that you were going to raise the higher rate of income tax threshold to £70,000, that's off the agenda now.
Well, at the end of the day, the key things we're focusing on is the aspiration, not day one, but the aspiration to make work pay for the lowest earners by lifting the starting point of income tax from £12,500 to £20,000. So that's the thing to focus on. But to achieve that, we've got to make the spending cuts by slashing net stupid zero. We can make substantial cuts and other changes.
So the rest of it, Richard, cutting fuel duty by 20 pence per litre, abolishing VAT on energy bills, inheritance tax, corporation tax, VAT, all gone.
That was a list for the time. Now we're in a completely different time.
But those tax cuts have all gone.
All aspirational, good ideas, but at the end of the day, the finances of the country are in a terrible state. They're going to get worse. As Nigel talked about today, we're very worried about the bond markets. We've got to focus on cutting the wasteful spending, making work pay, making small businesses want to take more risk. That will create...
Marr's calm questioning slices straight through Tice's evasions, exposing how reform's headline pledges evaporate the moment real numbers enter the conversation.
So my first question is, are you going to cut them? And if so, is that going to be retrospective? If I'm a police officer retiring now on a pension, am I going to lose some of my pension under reform?
No. What we're saying is we've got to talk about the future and what's the right structure for pensions for everybody in the future. I've already started to talk about the management of the local government pension schemes. We've got to look at the whole issue of the future of the unfunded pension liabilities. The thing is to look at that in the future for future entrants.
So you're saying to people who are in the public sector at the moment, civil servants and the people I was mentioning,
a contract is a contract. They're not going to lose anything. Is an employment contract.
So this is not really a big saver in the short term. This is
Andrew,
no, in the short term it's not, because they carry on getting their money.
Andrew, you have to appreciate the scale of the liabilities that are mounting up as people join the defined benefit public sector pension schemes, and it is enormous. And we're having a lot of work done. There'll be more on that. But
I'm not saying it's not a good thing to look at this. I'm just saying that in the short term, you're not going to save much money because all the people who are already on the defined pension carry on getting it.
I fundamentally disagree.
All right. Let me ask you about something else. You think the minimum wage is too high? It's not very high. It's sort of £10 or if you're younger.
As Nigel said, there's a range of ways of looking at it. The reality is that the Chancellor reduced the starting point for paying national insurance. So we've got to relook at all that. And here's the point. If it means that young people are priced out of work because the minimum wage for young people has been increased too far, you've got to be willing to look at it.
So it's about 10 quid an hour. You think that's too far? Too much?
But the direction of travel is further north in a declining...
Perhaps,
over the next couple of years, that's the Labour ambition. In a declining economy where private sector jobs are falling, we've got to be realistic about what's the right thing. So, what works?
Okay, so listen, I'm really interested in this. I'm sitting at home. I am 18 years old. I'm going to get the minimum wage in my first job. I really want to know what Richard Tice thinks I should be paid per hour.
Well, the great thing is to try and make sure that you're not taxed too much.
Give me an answer. Come on, Richard. You can give me an answer.
I'm not going to give you a per hour, per minute, because we're talking about in 3 years' time or 2 years' time when there's a general election.
But right now, you're saying £10 is too much.
What I'm going to say to any youngster is we will make work pay. And at the moment, in my constituency, I know 30 youngsters who were denied an opportunity in one theme park alone because of the national insurance increases. That's the sort of thing that I'm focusing on.
OK, so I'm listening at the moment and I'm thinking that if Reform become the government, I am going to lose some money, but they won't tell me how much.
No, if you're what we call alarm clock Britain, if you're getting up and going to work, no, you won't lose money. It's those who are abusing the system. It's the waste, of which there is vast amounts. They're the people we need to encourage to say, actually, you can't. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Work is a great thing. Everybody needs to work, including, as we said last week in a press conference, if you've got mild anxiety, the best solution to that, go to work.
Again, don't agree with the principle, but let's look at the detail of this. You've said mild anxiety. Who decides if my anxiety is mild or medium?
Face-to-face assessments as opposed to Zoom assessments.
So that takes a lot of time,
Yes,
and it's
it does.
expensive and slow.
Yeah.
But that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, but the assumption must
okay.
be, it's up to the individual to prove that they've got, serious mental health issues, which is a very serious illness. We all know that. But what I think many people, the Alarm Clock Britain, are furious at those who are basically skiving.
I'm just trying to think about the amount of money that might be saved here, because if you don't know, and I don't know, and neither of us do know, how many of these people are really seriously mentally ill and really can't work, and how many, in your words, are skiving or have got very minor things. We don't know the numbers, therefore we can't tell what kind of savings are going to be made.
Zia Yusuf has been making some calculations.
He doesn't know either. He doesn't know either.
You make some assumptions, but we also know, for example, we shouldn't be paying benefits to foreign nationals. That will save tens of billions of pounds.
That, as we both know, is a slightly different issue. I'm talking about the big numbers.
Wrong, Andrew. It's all the same issue of saving wasteful, unnecessary public sector spending.
But in terms of the savings,
you get the deficit down. Once you get the deficit down, if you start to deregulate back to where we need to be, then you create growth. And when you've got growth, you can afford performance-related tax cuts.
All right. At the moment, we spend as a country somewhere between 12 and 20 billion pounds a year on people with mental health problems who can't work. No one knows the exact figure, but that's the sort of range.
And we spend almost double that on net stupid zero, which we will scrap immediately.
Let me come to an even bigger figure, a much, much bigger figure. We spend 177 billion pounds a year on pensioners. Now, that has gone up and up and up because of the triple lock. It's gone up from something like 2% of GDP back in the 50s and 60s to north of 8% now. And if you're looking at the welfare bill, that is the bit that is running out of control. But your party won't talk about it.
Nor the other parties will talk. For the third time this evening, you're wrong. On a number of occasions, Nigel has clearly said that we're not guaranteeing the triple lock. The nation's finances are in serious trouble, and nothing's affordable if you go bust.
Well, that's a really important moment. So if I'm a pensioner listening, you will not guarantee the triple lock.
That's what we've said before, and we continue to say that. We can't guarantee it because we know the nation's finances are in a shocking state. Look, we'd all love to be able to pay as much as possible. We can only know where we're at when we start to make major savings, as we've talked about. But we're not guaranteeing the triple lock.
We are in trouble as a country, but even in trouble as a country, we have a lot of people still who are relatively prosperous. And the people that you are looking at for savings are the young and relatively impoverished on the minimum wage, and pensioners, some of whom may be very impoverished as well. Is that entirely fair? In other words, is this a reasonable approach?
Andrew Marr's questioning of Richard Tice illustrates the same tension that underpins Reform UK's platform. Great promises, bright slogans, and sweeping declarations that fail when scrutinised. Marr's strength here is not violence, but precision. With each inquiry, he pulls Tice back to the figures, the repercussions, and the ordinary people who will be directly impacted by these policies. And each time, Tice fails to provide concrete solutions. His departure from Reform's original tax-cutting agenda reveals a fact that the party works hard to disguise Reform previously promised a radical overhaul of Britain's tax system. Higher thresholds, cheaper fuel duty, no VAT on energy, no inheritance tax, and lower corporation tax. When pressed by Marr, Tice confesses, albeit only after continuous persuasion, that these pledges have been effectively scrapped. They were aspirational, he claims. In other words, not real. It is not costed, not deliverable. Marr is sharpest on fairness. He identifies who would be most affected by Reform's pivot. Young minimum wage workers, those with mental health concerns, and millions of pensioners who rely on the triple lock to keep up with growing prices. Tice does not deny that these groups may lose out. He simply does not specify how much. When Marr asks a simple question, how much should an 18-year-old be paid under a Reform government? Tice refuses to respond. When asked how many people he believes are, say, skiving, Reform is unable to answer. When pressed on the financial implications for pensioners, he admits that Reform will not ensure their income protection. Throughout the exchange, Marr's inquiries are based on economic fact. Tice's responses are rooted in political improvisation. Reform claims it will make work pay, but does not specify how much remuneration is sufficient. Reform claims to cut waste, but it cannot measure how much of its savings come from real reforms versus receiving assistance from vulnerable people. Reform claims to fix the nation's finances, but it avoids the unpleasant truth that Marr repeatedly emphasises. The most pressing spending constraints, pensions and healthcare, are precisely the areas reform is least ready to discuss. Finally, Marr reveals the weakness of reform's argument. It is not a completely developed strategy. It is a wish list without costs, a collection of slogans without structure. And in a country already stretched thin, Marr demonstrates why clarity is essential and why Tice lacks it. Let us know what you think down below in the comments.